Revenue is up. The team hustled. New business came in. You should feel pretty good. But the EBITDA line, simply flat once again. You know that quiet, sick feeling in your stomach?
20 to 40% of the week is really, or was for us, spent on low value grind and friction work. Roughly 14% have moved beyond limited pilots into anything that actually connects to their daily AMS system and CRM workflows. Yeah, agencies still running fully manual, disconnected processes, they're falling further behind on capacity and their speed and their margins. The agencies that treat AI as random weekend experiments, they're going to struggle more with talent retention, client expectations, and their EBITDA is going to suffer, unfortunately.
Hey, everyone. I want you to pause for 1 second and picture this. It's the last Friday of the month. You open the P&L. Revenue is up. The team hustled. New business came in. You should feel pretty good. But the EBITDA line, simply flat. Or worse, it's down a couple points once again. You know that quiet, sick feeling in your stomach? That's not bad luck. That's base camp. And most independent agencies in 2026 are still stuck right there. Busy as hell, climbing hard, but not gaining real elevation in the only number that actually buys freedom, and that's true operating profit. Here's the hard truth nobody wants to say out loud. The more volume you write without fixing the operational drag, the heavier the pack gets. Labor eats the new revenue. Good people burn out doing work that should be moved by itself, and clients feel the lag, and carriers notice the incomplete submissions. All while the agencies that figured this out are already pulling away while everyone else is still readjusting straps at base camp. Today, we're going to make that invisible cost completely visible. We're going to show you exactly how many hours and how many dollars are leaking every single week, and what we learned inside our own R&D lab at Triforta when we finally stopped accepting it as a normal. If that Friday P&L feeling is familiar, this episode is for you. Let's get started. Welcome to the Insurance AI Advantage series. I'm your host, Rodney Mattos Jr., and most agencies right now are stuck at base camp, buried in manual rekeying, jumping between carrier portals that never talk to each other, and chasing loss runs and ACORD forms by hand, and trying random AI prompts that never become a real system. It feels like you're carrying a backpack with everything loose inside and no clear route marked. And this series is about the operational lessons we learned the hard way inside Triforta's R&D lab, what actually creates a capacity, what finally moves data, and what starts lifting EBITDA without adding headcount. Dad, founder of Hyperionics and Triforta, great to have you on the trail with us today. Are you ready to share what we actually saw?
Yeah, hey, great to be here again, son. Yep, this episode is something I've been wanting to put together for quite some time. So, we've been building and iterating inside of our own R&D lab here at Triforta, and we have, I think, a pretty great series planned over the next few months. And the main thing we're going to be doing here today is we're going to be presenting for the very first time our AI for insurance systems advantage and what we've learned here over the last few years. Obviously, we're still learning, we're still iterating. Things are moving fast in this industry, but we wanted to get out the information as quickly as possible. So today we're going to make the invisible cost visible. We're going to show exactly where the money leaks and share what finally worked when we stopped treating AI like weekend experiments. So I'm ready to climb. Are you?
Yeah, absolutely. Dad, why don't we set the stage real quick? What's actually happening in independent agencies right now in the middle of 2026?
Well, son, as everyone sees it, I mean, if you're on Twitter or X or whatever platform, you can see AI tools and prompts are everywhere. And almost every agency owner I talk to has tried something, whether it's in Chat GPT or Claude, Gemini, you name it. Interest is sky high, especially for insurance. I mean, we've been waiting for technology to catch up to what is needed for insurance for a long time. But the real number that matters, and this is according to the Big I, Agents Council for Technology 2026 tech reports and their trends. 2/3 of independent agencies plan to increase their AI use this year.
Mhm.
I think that's probably higher than that, but yet nearly only one third still report they are using AI in any capacity at all. Another third are just experimenting. Only a small slice, roughly 14%, have moved beyond limited pilots into anything that actually connects to their daily AMS system and CRM workflows. And most agencies, they're still in the try a prompt on the weekend phase.
Mm.
Maybe there's some producers that are experimenting independently. And those experiments, the problem is they never become repeatable operational system that actually moves data automatically between your AMS, your CRM, and even the carrier portals that, everybody swivel chairs and logs into every single day. So the problem is you stay stuck losing 20 to 30% of everybody's working week to rekeying loss runs or hopping portals, chasing documents, manually checking ACORD forms, and all that time, that really should be high value client advice and focuses on new business.
Yeah, that's a good point. Paint the invisible league for me. Where do the hours and the dollars actually go every week?
Yeah. So, well, I don't know. Just picture like it is a typical Monday morning, before we got started here at Triforta. Service teams are already, pulling loss runs early in the morning, and those detailed claims history reports from carriers, and then they spend hours rekeying every line item, by hand into the AMS. Producers sitting around waiting because a submission is stuck in a carrier portal. They end up copying and pasting the same details across 4 or 5 different websites or more. Account managers have to flip, screens, checking ACORD forms line by line so nothing gets rejected. Then you get, phone calls, you're multitasking, emails pile up. Everyone feels busy from from the moment they sit down until they leave at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And that busy is the invisible pack weight. We're using our Sherpa climb metaphor. So,
Mhm.
and that pack weighs heavy, and it gets heavier as more work piles up. But 20 to 40% of the week is really, or was for us, spent on low value grind and friction work. Really, that non revenue generating activity. Instead of the top of license work, the real consultative work that our team members really crave
Mhm.
and our clients need. So labor costs keep climbing because you have to hire more people just to keep the same volume moving. And good talent, that's becoming harder to find and even harder to keep if you're on antiquated systems, for
Yep.
one. And then when the job feels like data entry instead of actually servicing and support and advising. And then submissions and renewals have gotten more complex. There's more underwriting requirements and questions and supplemental forms than ever. And clients and carriers both, they expect faster, more proactive service than most teams can actually deliver, while buried in that grind.
And that performance gap, how wide is it getting?
Yeah, it's widening every quarter. Yeah, agencies still running fully manual, disconnected processes. They're falling further behind on capacity and their speed and their margins. So looking ahead, we foresee the next 12 to 24 months and, through 27 and into 28, the agencies that treat AI as random weekend experiments, they're going to struggle more with talent retention,
Mhm.
client expectations, and their EBITDA is going to suffer, unfortunately. So the
Right.
ones who turn it into a connected, repeatable operational system where data actually moves between tools, they're the ones that are going to pull ahead in every area that matters. They're going to increase producer capacity, their renewal speed, speed to market, cost per policy, and real profit.
Mhm.
That split that's happening right now in real time. So, I guess, to make this invisible visible, the tools and reports that, and portals are currently running the show, right? So your people are reacting to them instead of controlling them.
Mhm.
And incentives are really misaligned because the system still rewards looking busy with admin work instead of the high value client conversations that actually grow the agency. And once you see that clearly, you really can start to then see and visualize and actually choose a different path.
Yeah. So the urgency is real for every owner listening who wants to own their EBITDA instead of watching it stay flat.
No, I mean, exactly. I mean, that's what this was about for us. It wasn't just about for us, finding ways to increase EBITDA. That just, is a great byproduct, of
Mhm.
course, of becoming more efficient. Your team's working smarter instead of harder, and giving them the resources that actually makes the work enjoyable again, so they can thrive and do what they are really passionate about doing. So you now see the current market reality and the forward split. The next clear step is understanding the myth that keeps most agencies locked at base camp.
Okay. So before we go any further, I want our listeners to do one thing right now, just a little exercise. And that's just to pause this episode for 60 seconds, grab a sticky note, open your notes app, or just write it on the back of an envelope or whatever's closest to you and answer these two questions honestly. The first is, how many hours last week did your team spend rekeying data or hopping between carrier portals? That's the first one. The second one is, what is your current EBITDA today? What is your current EBITDA margin or your best honest estimate? Just those two numbers, write those down.
Yeah, those two numbers are really the exact weight of your current backpack and how
Exactly.
heavy this climb will end up being for you. So, we're going to look at how to lighten that, obviously. And when, we come back to those numbers later, you already know exactly how much elevation is available and how hard that climb doesn't need to be. So let's go ahead and do that. And when we come back, we'll review it together.
All right. If you did that, you just took the first real step off base camp. Now let's keep going. Now I'm curious, Dad, and what's the biggest myth most agencies still hold about why their EBITDA isn't higher?
Yeah. So here's what I think. The myth is this: if we just work harder, hire more people, it could be VAs or really efficient staff that is really productive. When volume grows, or maybe we'll grab whatever new AI tool comes out, or and profitability will just naturally get better. And most agencies owners, they believe the daily grind and the rekeying data and the portal hopping, repetitive policy checks is simply just how insurance work has to be.
Mhm.
So, it's the idea that more effort and more bodies will fix profitability. But the problem is this belief keeps agencies, adding salary costs instead of gaining real capacity. So a producer who gets back 10 or 15 hours a week can sit with more clients. They can write more business and drive revenue without extra overhead. If your service teams shift from reactive to proactive, manual work processes, disconnected tools create, constant and invisible drag, and data gets trapped in one place and never flows to the next step.
Mhm.
One team member finishes something, but the next person has to start almost from scratch. It might feel productive, but it quietly compresses your margin, and really it burns out good people.
Right. And that backpack analogy really hits home. I mean, I could picture teams adjusting and readjusting all day long.
Yeah, just like
Yeah.
yeah, that's exactly right. It's like trying to hike, with a backpack with the straps keep falling off, and things stuff's falling out of your backpack, and you're exhausted long before you really, start to gain any real elevation or start to, see the expansive view. And once you see the myth clearly, you can stop accepting that drag as normal.
Yeah. How does this myth show up differently for a $5 million agency versus a $20 million one?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, there's obviously going to be a contrast there. Smaller agencies, they feel it in constant survival mode. They're always one step from burnout. Owners largely working nights or weekends. Larger agencies feel it in, stalled growth. They add staff, but margins stay flat or even shrink because overhead grows faster than profit. Producers can't rely on, their book of business to grow just based off of, renewal increases. So the market's, a little softer, renewal increases, especially in the commercial space, not as high as they once were. And, private equity firms are really placing pressure on people to write new business where otherwise they may not have consistently in the past. And so if they don't have the time to write new business, that creates a real bottleneck. So all of that, affects agencies of every size, but the cost and loss EBITDA that scales with your volume.
Absolutely. Now, what about talent retention and client experience?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I mean, it definitely talent is a challenge. Good people leave when they spend their days on low value grind instead of meaningful client work.
Hmm.
And the myth keeps the wrong incentives in place. Rewarding busyness instead of results. And clients get slower service and they get less proactive, consultative advice, and that hurts retention and it makes it harder to win new business.
What would change if an owner dropped this myth tomorrow morning?
Yeah, I think they'd start looking at systems instead of just effort. And that single mindset shift, it opens a different path and puts them in control of their EBITDA.
Gotcha. Now, what's the most common operational mistake that keeps agencies stuck at this base camp?
Um, I think really the mistake is treating AI like scattered sticky notes, trying one prompt here, another prompt there, but never connecting it to a repeatable operational system that actually moves data between your tools, between your AMS and your CRM, and even through the carrier portals. So, a true operational system is the connecting layer that makes data move automatically between your AMS, your CRM, and AI tools so the same workflows run consistently on every file without constant human restarting and stopping and restarting. So if you save 10 to 20 hours per person per week, producers get back time for selling and advising. And the service teams, they can deliver better client experiences at scale. And operations are going to run smoother with fewer errors. There's going to be greater consistency and accuracy in their client intelligence and the data.
Hmm.
And scattered prompts, they never become reliable and data stays stuck in individual silos. So unfortunately, teams stay trapped in the same daily grind. Margins stay compressed and you keep adding headcount just to keep up within your agency.
Like having good ideas written on random notes, but no real filing system to use them every day, huh?
Yeah, I mean, it's like putting together a business plan, but it's in disparate pieces and not coordinated and aligned and actionable.
Mm.
So, or like trying to run your agency with a dozen separate spreadsheets that never talk to each other instead of one connected setup where everything updates automatically. That's the difference between an old flip phone and the smartphones that everyone uses today, where your calendar and your contacts and your maps and GPS and everything else all works together without you having to copy information manually. Scattered notes example or analogy and disconnected spreadsheets that keeps you really at base camp, without any opportunity to gain real elevation. A real operational system that changes everything.
Absolutely. Now, give us an example of what a scattered prompt day looks like versus a system day.
Yeah, well, I can give you examples because that's how we started, but we figured out there's a better way. So let's just say, when we were starting out, a producer might open up ChatGPT, types a prompt for submission. They don't have any idea how to write a prompt in the first place properly to maximize the use of the language models,
Yep.
and they copy the output, right? And still rekeys everything into the AMS by hand. So it's hours wasted. Sometimes you kind of get in a I guess in a loop with a chat or a language model, and it just keeps iterating and gives you different suggestions, and hard to get it to actually give you the results you're looking for. So you end up sometimes spending way more time in those things than you really should.
Mm.
And then workflow. So in contrast, if you had a system, then the workflow would pull the data straight from the AMS and generate, the narrative using a proven engine that pushes it toward the carrier portal, logs the activity, and notifies the team. And then the producer, all they have to do is review instead of build anything or rebuild anything, right? So that's the difference between spinning wheels and gaining real elevation.
Now, how does this affect renewals and policy reviews specifically?
Well, yeah, renewals are where, the pain multiplies. Yeah. So, manual teams chase loss runs, they rekey updates, and, hope the carrier accepts it. With a real system, the data flows, the
Mm.
narrative updates automatically, and you get faster turnaround. And that means you got happier, more, more, more. That means you have happier clients and better retention.
Yeah.
And policy review becomes proactive instead of last minute scrambles. So the system actually flags key changes so your team focuses on client advice, not hunting for data. And you end up in control instead of the tools controlling your day.
Performing at the top of your license, I mean, that's the epitome of what we love to do, building relationships and being consultative rather than rekeying
Yeah,
information all day
no,
long.
no doubt. That's what this is all about.
Yeah. So why don't you share a few real world examples that show this in action? What you actually observed?
Yeah. So, I mean, we've talked with a lot of insurance agencies and done some advising, and those. I mean, I've had relationships with lots of producers and agency owners for the last 25 plus years, and when I worked on the carrier side, building those relationships before actually owning and operating PNC and employee benefits shops. But we've watched. I think there was one mid-sized commercial line shop with had a few producers, and I saw each of them, spent 15 to 20 hours a week on manual submissions. They're logging into multiple carrier portals and rekeying data and chasing, underwriters for missing information. And they looked at their numbers and their EBITDA was stuck around 22%. And they had team morale, not much of it. It was dropping because everyone felt overworked
Sure.
and underproductive. So one producer told us, he felt like he was doing data entry instead of any real insurance work.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that's unfortunately a downside
We
of
see it all the time.
this problem, right?
Yeah.
And then so we also saw there was some agency that tried some AI prompts that they found online, and the prompts worked for one or two tasks, but nothing connected.
This segment is brought to you by the people and platforms that make this show possible. First, Triforta. If you're an employer who's tired of runaway renewals, bloated, fully insured plans, and the feeling that your benefit strategy is working against you instead of for you, then hear us clearly. You do not have to play that game anymore. Help business owners fix broken health insurance. We bring cost containment strategies, self-funded captives, data intelligence, and real-world case studies that routinely save employers 6 and 7 figures without cutting benefits. If you want a benefits plan that actually rewards results, visit triforta.com and download our blueprints for better benefits. And second, Aperionics. If you run an insurance agency and you're still drowning in manual quoting, data entry, or commission reconciliation, you're leaving more than time on the table. You're leaving money. Aperionics is the automation layer built by insurance people for insurance people. AI quoting for carriers that don't have APIs. Instant policy data extraction, commission statement automation, proposal generation in seconds, not hours. Aperionics reduces operating costs and gives teams their time back so they can work at the top of their license. Learn more at aperionics.com. That's APEIRONIX.com. Triforta and Aperionics, 2 companies, 1 united mission. Fix what's broken, elevate what's possible, and help real people thrive. Now let's get back to the show.
To their AMS or their CRM. So they ended up adding more service staff just to maintain service levels. And, their profit barely moved. The team was frustrated because the tools never quite, fit the real workflow. And then we watched what happened when there was another shop that finally connected the workflows properly, ourselves included at Triforta, and submissions that used to take days started moving in hours because data flowed instead of being rekeyed. So producers in our team and the other organizations that we've been guiding, the producers regain 10 to 12 hours a week, and that's just baseline.
Hmm.
And then within 90 days, significant measurable EBITDA improvement because new capacity turned into better retention numbers, had more time to focus on cross-selling and rounding out existing accounts, and that generated new revenue without, this is the key, without adding any additional headcount.
Mhm.
And one producer went from closing less than 2 new accounts per month to almost 4 accounts per
Wow.
month. And their overall EBITDA moved from 21% to nearly 30% in the first quarter. So without adding a single additional staff member. So there was an account manager said, "Hey, I finally feel like I'm helping clients instead of just pushing paper." And told us later that she stopped dreading coming in on Monday mornings for the first time in 3 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now tell us more about the day-to-day change in that shop.
Well, yeah, I mean, it really kind of starts with this, like this. So service team members went from chasing documents to, having proactive client conversations. Producers spent their mornings in meetings instead of waiting on carrier portals, and op leaders finally had visibility to their revenue, and month end close got a lot faster.
Yeah.
So renewals that used to take 2 weeks started closing in just a couple days. The team reported way higher morale, and their clients noticed that faster, more thoughtful, proactive service, and that to us, that's what climbing and summiting looks like when the friction is actually removed and your backpack actually fits properly. So
Yeah. Now, what was the biggest surprise?
biggest surprise, well, I think how quickly the EBITDA started moving once the friction dropped, and that's really the equation that we've figured out here in our own lab, our own R&D lab here at Triforta, is that, friction kills EBITDA. And so once you can quickly, identify what friction is holding your organization back, that's when the EBITDA started moving. Really, once that friction dropped. So organization didn't need new hires to grow. They just needed the operational drag removed so their current team could work. And I say it all the time, work at the top of their license. And that pattern is what we kept seeing in our own lab.
Mm.
So, most people think AI is about replacing people, which is not, or it's about just speeding up the same old work. And that's not it either. The real truth is that the right operational systems let your existing team finally work at the top of their license and doing the high value client advice and relationship work they were actually hired to do. I mean, these are professionals that have years of expertise and experience and perspectives on, ways to mitigate losses and protect your clients in their organizations and help their businesses become more predictable. And that's what they were hired to do. And they'd rather do that instead of pushing paperwork. And that's when morale really starts to jump. See, the agencies that will win in 2027 and all the way through to 2028 won't be the ones with the biggest staff or the most tools. They'll be the ones with the engineered system that removes daily friction so data moves and people focus on what actually moves the needle.
Right. And that goes against what a lot of people are saying in this industry.
Yeah, no, it does for sure. Yeah, I mean, it comes from real experience inside our own R&D lab at Triforta. We've seen teams light up when they stop doing grunt work and start doing the work that actually grows the business. And it grows the revenue that they receive from the commissions they earn on the additional policies.
Right. So wait, you're telling me that the winner isn't the biggest or the flashiest?
Yeah, that's right. That's that's really the takeaway here, right? The winner is the one who owns the operational flywheel.
Yeah.
That's the contrarian truth that we keep seeing. So here's a hard hitting number, and we've seen this, time and time again from the different industry reports. But average, independent agency EBITDA margins are sitting between 15 and 20% for most agencies in 25, 26, with many stuck maybe even lower than that. Top performers hit maybe 30% or higher, a little bit higher. But agencies that build connected operational systems are seeing 10 to 20% productivity gains, faster cycle times on submissions and renewals, and real margin expansion. So the gap between manual heavy agencies and those with systematized operations is growing wider every single quarter.
And what does that mean for an agency doing 10 million in revenue?
10 million. Yes. Well, it doesn't take much to move the needle and get a significant lift. So a 3-point EBITDA lift on a $10 million agency is $300,000 more profit every single year. So that's real money that can go to growth, better pay, owner distributions. That gap isn't, hypothetical or theoretical. It shows up in your operating account, like real dollars in the bank account.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, what about the productivity side?
Well, I mean, you think about the hours that people gain and what we've seen, 10 to 20% capacity back without new headcount is the difference between staying stuck and actually climbing and gaining elevation. You can start measuring those points pretty quickly.
Now, what should owners and principals take away from all of this in this episode?
Uh, get a system. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
so look, leaders need to look at where time and money actually flow in your agency today. So you're probably doing that to some degree, but those hours lost to rekeying and portal hopping directly shrink producer capacity. And of course, that relates to lower EBITDA. So, you get to decide. Keep letting disconnected tools run the show through constant friction or take full ownership of the operational flywheel in your organization.
Now, how do they start making that decision this week?
Well, yeah, I mean, we would say start with this: pull your last quarter's numbers, calculate hours spent on manual task. Check with your team. Ask 3 people how much time they lose to rekeying and portal hopping each week, and then pick one real workflow and test a better way on a single process. It's just taking little incremental steps and then stacking those up. And before you know it, the work shows you the way. And before you know it, you have an operational system, and your agency has fully adopted AI in every flow. And so that shift from confusion to control that happens faster than most owners could ever expect.
The work shows you the way. I love that.
Yeah.
Now, what's the financial control that they will gain?
Well, they stop guessing why margins are flat and start owning the flywheel system that actually moves them. So revenue per person, that rises. Cost per policy, that drops. EBITDA becomes something you engineered instead of hoping and praying for, something to change or improve. So that's real control. So, I think there's definitely some role specific advantages that we've identified. So for producers, they get to spend more time in front of clients instead of waiting on admin. Imagine producers closing more business because their submissions move without them having to babysit them. And then service and account managers, they deliver proactive experience at a greater scale instead of chasing paperwork. And then your ops leaders in your organization, they run with speed and accuracy and fewer errors. And their entire team is much happier because they can go from, month end close in 10 days down to 1 or 2. So that's a real game changer.
Now, what's the one thing each role should do this week?
What should they do this week? Well, they can choose to do 1 or 2 things. They can sit back and do everything that they've always done and not make any changes. Or I would start with the producers. I would say, hey, pick one open submission and test a structured narrative approach on it and see how things change. For service, hey, test a cleaner loss run extraction process on one renewal. And for your ops team, baseline your current hours lost this week to rekeying and portal hopping. So, one real file each. That's how the climb begins.
And if each of these roles started with one of those, how do they know it's working?
Yeah. Well, I think it's the awareness will definitely reveal itself, and they'll feel the same time come back within days. So then you'll see it in the numbers, which will show up 30, 60 days later. So just the key is pick one workflow this week, test it on a real file, and you'll feel the difference immediately.
Perfect. Now, I'd like for you to walk us through the real money impact, like we're looking at a spreadsheet together. What does that look like?
Yeah, I mean, as you keep it simple. So, take a typical producer or service person, right? So, if they're losing 15 to 25 hours a week to manual grind and rekeying and, doing policy comparisons and reviews and searching carrier portals, with a connected system, they're realistically claim 10 to 15 of those hours back.
Mhm.
And before, 5 producers each losing 20 hours a week, that equals 100 hours wasted, right, per week at a blended
Right.
loaded cost. Say if they're making $50 an hour, That's $5,000 a week or $260,000 a year just in drag. So, after a system, you can reclaim 12 hours per week, per person. That equals 60 hours freed weekly. And that time becomes, could become client meetings, new business meetings, renewal conversations that add to cross-selling opportunities. And even at conservative close rates, that adds meaningful revenue.
Right.
And your costs stay flat because you didn't add any headcount, and EBITDA margin improves, visibly within 60 days at the max. So one agency we watched turn this into a six-figure profit impact in the full year, and by growing their organization, expanding their capabilities, becoming more efficient without adding any headcount. And 90 days in, they were already seeing the lift in producer capacity and renewal speed.
That's amazing. Now imagine if everybody did that. Now, let's break it down. Break down the 30, 60, 90-day timeline.
Yeah. So I would say, like, for example, the way we see this being implemented, the first, 30 days, implement one workflow, 5 to 8 hours, maybe saved per person is what you could expect. And then team confidence goes up. And then in 60 days, you get 2 or 3 workflows running. Capacities, starts to gain, and that compounds and builds even more momentum. And then you see that show up, the first EBITDA movement that becomes visible. So then, 90 days, everything starts to feel normal. People will get in the habit of using the workflows, the automation, the AI is integrated in their daily lives. We call it adding, imagine a future where every operator had their own AI teammate working with them side by side. This is what we're talking about. So that will start to feel normal eventually, and revenue per person rises because of it. And then you can see that you're clearly climbing. And then every number becomes measurable, so you're never guess again.
Now let's talk a little bit about objections. Now, what are the top objections you hear?
Well, they're pretty superficial, I would say, but the common ones we hear is, hey, we tried AI and it didn't work. But we say most have tried scattered prompts. They haven't tried a connected system. So once the data actually moved, that changed everything. Another objection we hear is, you got change is hard, change management. My team won't adopt new things. The key is, like, we have 65-year-olds in our organization that are doing this. So if they can do it, anybody can do it. So, right. And you've seen them yourself. But I say start tiny with one real workflow for their exact role. Stick with them, show them exactly how to utilize it. And that one win, that gives them hours back. And that's what creates excitement. And that's what creates momentum. We've never seen a team reject a process that gives them back time in the first week. Right. So
No.
objection 3 is, hey, what about compliance and E&O risk? Well, the reality is it's cleaner, it's more consistent outputs with built-in checks, actually reduce errors that manual work often misses. And then you get cleaner submissions, which means fewer carrier kickbacks and lower risk of, policies being written incorrectly. And then the one other objection, I think, everybody's busy. We're too busy to do anything right now. But the reality is, if you just take a little bit of time, that first workflow is so much time saving. It's the faster time than it takes to implement. So the busier you are, the more you actually need the system that lightens your pack.
Yeah, it's huge.
Yeah. And then, okay, this was one more objection. Hey, our AMS system is kind of clunky. It's a legacy platform. They haven't updated yet. It doesn't have, APIs, or they're expensive. Well, what we're talking about here is, connecting layer works on top of whatever anyone has. So there's nothing to rip and replace. You add the operational layer that makes the old tools finally talk to each other. And that's pretty significant. So being able to do this without having to change anything within their technology stack, which is pretty important.
Yeah, that's also huge too. Connectivity is a big deal. Now, every one of those has a clear path forward. That's for sure.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Each of these has been overcome by our own agency and other real agencies that we've helped and we've worked with. So, these answers, they're practical and they're already proven. And the control stays with the organization, stays with you. So there are some, things that we want to make sure that people avoid that we've learned. And I would say there's a few common pitfalls I wanted to make sure that I share with everybody in this episode, starting with, one of them is, hey, don't start with too many prompts all at once, right? Or we call them skills now. Prompts are now become skills. Eventually they'll become loops. Well, that's the next phase that's being worked on. But avoid that just by picking just one workflow and mastering it first, and then show the real value and the time savings, and let that build momentum. So the key is don't start with too many prompts at once. Just perfect one, and move on, and start to build on top of that. Pitfall number 2 is no real connection between tools. So make sure data actually moves instead of getting copied again and again. And number 3 that we see is, expecting instant perfection. Treat it like training. The first week is learning. There's going to be, like I said, the work's going to show you the way. It's going to be a little bit of trial and iterations to get it perfected for your particular organization. But by week 2, 3, and 4, you see significant improvement and starts to build momentum. And then another pitfall, ignoring the numbers. So don't do that. Track hours saved. You're going to see savings. You're going to see time savings. You're going to see increases in capacity. You need to celebrate those and need to measure those. So be able to track that and those gains weekly, so you can see progress. And ultimately, it's a way to keep your team motivated. So we can show them those details. Like you said, you can't manage what you can't measure, right? So we definitely need to measure that.
Mm-hmm.
And then go it alone. Without a clear process, or without, following some guidance from someone that's walked this trail and climbed this mountain before. So follow a deliberate sequence so you don't have to invent or carve the trail yourself.
Yeah, those all feel like the exact traps most people will fall into.
Yeah, they are. I mean, we fell into some of them ourselves. That's why
sure
we wrote the guide. We wrote the guide, so we can show you where the crevices are and where the headwinds are, and help you navigate the trail so you can do it without slipping and sliding all the way down.
Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone has a simple way around it, right? So we want them to know the traps and the exact exits, and that's control.
Now, how does someone listening right now take the first steps this week?
Well, the key is, we put together a guide. I haven't talked about it, but they'll be able to pull that up at the end of this episode. And basically, it's a system to show them how to get started. Within that system, there's a ton of resources and things that we've learned, giving it away for free. Just pick one of those real workflows. They're all organized by different departments, from producers to service to account management to operations and so forth, marketing desks. But just pick one real workflow that is currently leaking hours in your organization. Where do you feel like the most frustration is? It could be submissions or loss run handling, or it could be renewal preparation or building proposals or anything. There's a lot of stuff, right? So just test a cleaner, more structured approach on a single, real situation, a real file, a real account, and track the time saved and the quality of the output. And do that 3 times in the next week. Then look at 2 numbers that you wrote down earlier, when we paused and we had you do your personal audit. And you'll already see the beginning of the lift if you do that.
Yeah, that's as clear as it gets.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So the key is one workflow, one real account or real file. That's how you leave Basecamp and start owning the operational path ahead.
All right, Dad, let's bring this home for everyone listening today. Now, most agencies are still stuck at Basecamp. Heavy packs, no clear trail, data that doesn't move, and the same daily function holding everyone back. But today we just made the invisible cost visible and shared what we learned inside the Triforta R&D lab about why it happens and what finally starts moving the needle. We also talked about the hidden operational drag that keeps EBITDA stuck, the myth that more effort and more people will fix it, the mistake of treating AI as random prompts instead of a true system, and what it really costs your agency and profit and team morale. And you now have clarity on exactly what's been holding most agencies back and the exact next step that puts you in control. Pick one real workflow, run a cleaner on your one real file this week, and measure the hours that come back. And this is the Insurance AI Advantage series. We're sharing the operational lessons we learned the hard way so you don't have to invent the trail yourself. Operational systems, not just theory. And if this episode was useful and you want the exact playbook we built from these lessons, the 90-page Insurance AI Advantage system with 21 copy-paste prompts, the 4 signature engines, the 30-day adoption plan, the metrics that matter dashboard, and the quick start map for every role, it's free. The link is in the show notes. And we're also opening a limited number of free 60-day Aperionics pilots for agencies that want hands-on help installing the connecting layer. And access is limited. So if that interests you, the details are also in the same place as the guide. Now, Senior and I will be right here with you on the next episode. We want you to keep climbing, and we are genuinely excited for what's ahead for your agency. Now, thanks, Dad, listeners. We'll see you on the next episode of the Insurance AI Advantage.
Yep. Thanks, everyone. Enjoy the climb. Enjoy the guide. Hope you get a lot out of it. And we look forward to hearing from you if you want to take the next steps and check out a pilot and a 60-day trial with Aperionics. But good luck. Hope these tools help. They helped us in our lab at Triforta. And we're growing and expanding. And we hope the same for you and your teams. Take care, everyone.
Take care.
This is Insurance in Motion. This is the automation layer. This is Aperionics. We built the motion, but it's you. You make it matter.